Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. If you could just hang tight, we're going to make some people interpreters for this session so that we can have Russian and Spanish interpretation for our viewers tonight. So it'll be just a moment and we will start the meeting. And Sarah, if you could let me know when our interpreters are panelists, and then I'll get started. Okay, our interpreters are starting to join us. It looks like we have our Spanish interpreter here, and we're just waiting on our Russian interpreter, and then we'll begin. So Sarah, we have Cindy Flores as a panelist. Are you able to see her?
I am not seeing our other interpreter. I see that Cindy is on as a co-host, and I'm not sure if that will cause issues for interpretation.
Okay, so we will give it a practice try. Typically, Cindy shows up as a panelist when she does interpretation for us. So a co-host is a little bit different, but we will give it our best shot, and we're really glad you're all here tonight. So welcome to our informational meeting for the Gresham-Barlow School District School Resource Officer Outreach and Review Process. I'm Athena Vadnais, Communications Director for the Gresham-Barlow School District, and we are so glad you're here. Cindy.
Bienvenidos a la reunión informativa sobre el proceso de alcance comunitario y revisión del programa de oficiales escolares, o sea, los policías asignados a las escuelas del distrito escolar de Gresham-Barlow.
And Luba, are you able to join us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Well, I just welcomed everyone to the meeting. If you could interpret that for our Russian audience.
Yep. Добро пожаловать. Мы очень рады приветствовать вас на нашей встрече на тему школьных полицейских и пересмотра этой программы.
Before we get started, I would like to share with you how you can access interpretation services in Spanish or Russian during tonight's meeting.
Antes de comenzar, me gustaría compartir con ustedes cómo pueden acceder a los servicios de interpretación en español o ruso durante la reunión de esta noche.
Перед тем, как мы начнем, я бы хотела объяснить вам, как вы можете включить перевод на ваш язык, русский или испанский.
All right. Our interpreters for tonight are Cindy Flores and Luba Matiko.
Los intérpretes esta noche son Luba Matiko y yo.
Наши переводчики сегодня это Cindy Flores и Люба Матико.
And here's how you access Spanish and Russian interpretation.
Y así es como se puede acceder la interpretación en español o en ruso.
Вот как вы можете включить перевод на русский или испанский.
If you look at the tools on the bottom of your screen, you will see a globe icon with the word interpretation.
Si observa las herramientas en la parte de abajo de su pantalla, verá un icono de globo con la palabra interpretación.
Если вы посмотрите, то внизу вашего экрана будет глобус со словом interpretation, перевод.
All right, click on the globe and select the language channel for the audio interpretation that you desire.
Seleccione el globo y el lenguaje para la interpretación que usted desee.
Нажмите на этот глобус и выберите нужный вам язык.
After you select your language, you may choose to mute the original audio by clicking on the toggle switch.
Después de seleccionar su lenguaje, puede optar por silenciar el audio original haciendo clic en el botón para que nomás enseñe parte del audio.
All right, well, Luba?
После того, как вы выберете нужный вам язык, вы можете выключить аудио на английском, нажав на 3 точечки.
Wonderful, thank you. So our interpreters are now going to go into their interpretation rooms. And so you'll have to click on the language, Spanish or Russian, if you want to hear them. So from now on, the regular audio will be English. So joining us tonight for this very important informational meeting is Superintendent James Hugh. He is going to provide us with an introduction. And then we have some independent third-party team of consultants who will lead the process. Dr. Christine Moses and Mr. John Lenson of Buffalo Cloud Consulting. Here's a look at what the agenda will be for tonight's meeting. Dr. Moses and Mr. Lenson will share with us an overview of the process, information on how you can participate in the listening sessions if you would like to do so. But first, Superintendent James Hugh will provide us with some context for this work. James?
Yes, thank you, Athena. Well, good evening and welcome to tonight's informational meeting. My name is James Hugh and I am happy to serve as your Superintendent of Schools. Thank you for joining us tonight to learn more about the important outreach effort underway in the Gresham-Barlow School District. The district is conducting a review of its School Resource Officer program. The district believes this program is critically important. We want to make sure that our schools are safe and inclusive environments, and we want students to feel welcomed and supported. We will create a path forward for our School Resource Officer program in the Gresham-Barlow School District by actively listening to the many layers of our students' lived experiences. We will also provide an opportunity for families, staff, and the community to share their perspectives. By working together, we can identify the strengths and weaknesses of the program and identify how we can improve it. Thank you again for joining us this evening and working with the Gresham-Barlow School District to maintain a safe school environment for the students in our community. Together, great things will continue to happen in the school district, folks. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll turn it over to Christine Moses.
Thank you so much, Athena. It is such an honor to be here this evening. I would like to first popcorn over to John Lenson to help set the context of how we came to be working with Gresham-Barlow School District. John?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Moses. Several months ago, Superintendent Hugh reached out to me and asked and explained that they wanted to conduct a review process of the school resource officers in the school district. And we talked a little bit about the process and what the district was doing and what the district needed. And I really thought this is so meaningful, for the district and wanted to be of support and wanted to say yes. And I said, let me get back to you because it looked like a big process. And so Superintendent Hugh knew I had experience working with other school districts conducting a similar review. And as I understood the process, my first thought was, I need to bring Christine Moses on board in this process because of her experience around community outreach, community partnerships, also knowing that she was working with the city of Gresham. And so I reached out to Christine and then we talked and then we reached out to 2 other partners in the process, and that's Hector Roche and Liberty Gonzalez. So that's kind of how we came into this. And now I will give it back to you, Dr. Moses.
Thank you so much. So our charge is really straightforward. We have a responsibility to the superintendent to conduct outreach and review of the Gresham-Barlow School District Resource Officer Program, SRO program. We have a responsibility to the community to listen deeply to multiple perspectives, and we take this charge very seriously. Both John and I have experience with qualitative research strategies and reporting. I just completed my dissertation at the University of Oregon, and I have the student loans to prove it. So we are both really excited to be able to listen, to step into the room, to hold the safer, braver containers, to listen deeply. And we hope that in the process, learning happens on many different levels. John, do you mind giving us what the process is?
Thank you, Dr. Moses. My pleasure. So a big part of the process involves meeting directly with the superintendent and also the cabinet, because we need to understand the history of the program, the context in terms of where it resides and what the impact and who's been involved. We needed to look at the policy and the legal agreement. And in the process, we are looking at the school and community culture and the status of the SRO program in the Gresham-Barlow School District. We have already conducted several of those meetings. In this process, we're also meeting and have met with City of Gresham leaders, the City of Gresham Police Department, and former school resource officers to understand more about the program and their experience with the program and where they are headed, what their plans are for the future, and how that relationship with the school district is important to the city and to the City of Gresham Police Department. The next one is the biggest part of the process, and Dr. Moses will speak more to that, but this involves the listening sessions. And then we're also conducting a review of the data. We're looking at the contacts with SROs. We're also looking at school discipline, and we're looking at school climate data, just so we understand the context so that we can bring that analysis into our report, which is the last part of the process. We will be developing a detailed report that will reflect what we have learned from the community, what we have learned from students and families and staff and community. And from the listening sessions and the review of the data and the meetings, we will develop recommendations for the superintendent. And I will pass it over to Dr. Moses.
Thank you so much. So the listening sessions are really key because it is about active listening to the many, many layers of students' lived experience and the multiple perspectives of families, staff, and community members. We really want to understand and have deep questions and discussions that'll focus on the experience with SROs and the experience of safety in the schools and recommendations moving forward. So each of these important groups, students, families, staff, community members, will be able to listen to each other in these sessions and then make recommendations to what that future could be. The listening sessions will provide an opportunity for participants to hear each other and deepen understanding and community. Through this process, personally, I hope that people within the school community can hear the multiple perspectives, can deepen relationships, can listen and hear and then create solutions together, that this is a launching point into the future of listening sessions around issues that are facing every type of student within this school district. And the beautiful part is that listening sessions will be in person and in Zoom. And so we want to provide as many different ways as possible to be able to bring people's voices into this process. So John, I'm going to send this back to you about data collection and review.
Thank you, Christine. We are looking at data from the high schools and also from the police department regarding the interactions between the officers, the resource officers, and students, and also with families. That will paint a picture of the history of engagement and interactions. We're also looking at school discipline data because there's a connection between what students are experiencing in the school and often their interactions with school resource officers and their experience of safety. And the district has collected all of that data already. And so it is there for us to include in our data collection and review. The district has already conducted school climate surveys. And in addition to that, multiple interviews with students have been taking place over the last several months. And we will have access to student voice and student experience of school culture and school climate and their experience of safety from those surveys and also from those interviews. Along the way, we will also be open to other data that will be recommended for us to review as we engage in this process. We are in a collaborative mode with community and with students, and especially with the school district and with the city of Gresham. So there may be other sources of data that will be meaningful, and we will review and analyze those data as well. And let's look at the next slide, because we're going to summarize the process in turn, and we'll share how many people, how many sessions, and what we learned from different sessions, what we learned from students and from family and from staff and community. We're going to be summarizing our learning into some key perspectives and themes, just to get focus in our report to the superintendent. And as we review what we've learned and what the themes are, we will identify some opportunities for the school district moving forward with their partnership with school resource officers. And then we will develop some questions for the superintendent to consider moving forward. And then we will have some very specific recommendations. And this will all go in our report directly to the superintendent of the school district. Okay, next slide.
Thank you so much, John. I want to invite everyone here and everyone within the district to our first big public listening session that's going to be on May 17th at West Gresham Elementary School Building on Powell Boulevard from 6 to 8 p.m. And so this is our first opportunity as a larger community to meet together in person. If you're unable to attend, I deeply, deeply invite people to email me, buffalocloudconsulting@yahoo.com, to give us your experience with SROs within this school district and what you would want to see in the future. Those are the two guiding questions that we're asking every single group, and that's what we're listening for. And so I invite also for you to register on the district website at gresham.k12.or.us, so we can have a heads up for nutritional snacks for dinner and for childcare, because we'll be providing those. Thanks to Athena, yay, to your greatness.
Yes.
So thank you.
We're looking forward to that event. And yes, please go to the district website on the homepage. You'll see a link and register so we can get a good head count, because we want to make sure we have plenty of food and we have proper childcare so that everyone who wants to participate can. And as a reminder, if you cannot participate, please email Christine and she will help you get involved in the process. So now it is time to move on to your questions, now that we've heard from our consultants and learned about the process and what things will be happening within our community. And so there is a Q&A box where you can enter your question, and feel free to enter it in English, Spanish, or Russian. We have our interpreters standing by, and they will be helping me to translate any questions that come to us in Spanish or Russian, as well as the ones that are shared in English. So we want everyone to participate and get their questions answered. And our first question is, will there be affinity groups at these listening sessions?
In the public one on May 17th, John and I plan to break people into affinity groups to be able to have those deeper conversations. And so, yes, in the public sessions, we will ask people to break into affinity groups, have those smaller conversations, and then be able to report out at the public listening sessions. Absolutely.
Let me add to that too. We may set up other in-person or online Zoom sessions that could be affinity based. We know that when people are with others who share their same experience, that there is a more willingness to speak their truth without being judged and without having to explain their truth. So we are open to that, and we will be scheduling sessions for families and for community as we move forward. I'd also like to answer the question that was listed about the ACLU of Oregon. Is that all right, Athena?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, someone asked that we speak to the ACLU of Oregon that has collected testimonials from families harmed by SROs. We will reach out to the ACLU of Oregon to receive that information and that data. If whoever posted that could give the name of a contact person, either to Athena or to Christine Moses at Buffalo Cloud Consulting, then we will reach out. We are still in this process of learning, and we want to hear the voices, from community, from all perspectives of the community.
Okay, our next question, will the listening session only be in person and not hybrid or online?
So the May 17th is in person. We will have additional sessions that are online. I'm not seeing hybrid. I think that may be just too difficult, but I think having all in person or all online and would be the way to go, just for logistics.
Okay, our next question. Will the district consider ending the school resource officer program? I think that's one for Superintendent Hugh.
Yes, thank you. As I had shared with our community in November, I am fully supportive of our SRO program, but this review is to improve the actual program. So the information from the consultants is going to help inform me on how do we improve the SRO program. So the answer that I will share is that it is not my intent to remove the SRO program at this time.
Okay, our next question. Why was the officer at Gresham High School removed from the school?
That would be another one for me. And I will say that I said, based on a recommendation from the Gresham High School principal, as well as conversations that I had with the chief at the time, it was agreed to that we would remove the officer from Gresham High School. Since that time, the officer is back, but he is not currently at Gresham High School.
Okay. Here's the question. Are Barlow students being interviewed as part of the process?
Yes, they are. Absolutely.
And what high schools are included in these listening sessions? What district high schools?
So I can answer that. Gresham High School, San Barlow High School, Springwater Trail High School, and the Ray Academy, which includes our eFlex program that's housed at Gresham High School. So there's a myriad of high school students that represent our entire high school at the district level.
Great. So we have a mother who says her daughter attends Gresham High School. She tells me every day she is scared to go to school. And last week she was surrounded by a group of boys and they were threatening her. And she says that her daughter has told her she wants an SRO. What should this parent tell her daughter? She's asking.
So I would recommend that parent and daughter go to the school administration and share what had happened and the incident that's involved, and to share and make sure that when there is a listening session, daughter and parent attend, so that you can share from your perspective your support for the SRO program.
Here's a question about the data being collected. Will you be collecting data on fights during the SRO and post the SRO being removed at Gresham High School?
We will be requesting that data, and it will be a little complicated because a lot of the post SRO data will have been online learning, and so yeah, we'll collect the data and we will try we'll try to analyze and make any meaning from it that we can.
Okay. Here's a comment about the data. Will you please make disaggregated data transparent to the community, which demonstrates felt safety for marginalized community members, particularly those most marginalized and impacted by over-policing? I'd like to see before, during, and after felt safety data for other schools that have removed SRO officers nationwide or across Oregon.
Christine, do you want me to take that one?
That would be great, John. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are very committed to disaggregating the data, and because we know the experience is different. And so it's very meaningful to hear the stories and to report the stories of those who have around safety from marginalized community members. We are also very familiar with national data around the presence of school resource officers and schools and districts that have removed school resource officers. So we will reference some of that research in our report.
Okay. For those children who have had traumatic experiences while in school due to a lack of officer or an officer-related issue, is there a way for them to privately tell their stories?
Yes, they can email me their stories. That would be, I welcome those stories. So using my email address, buffalocloudconsulting@yahoo.com, those stories are welcome.
Okay, and just a reminder, if you have a question, there's a Q&A box in the toolbar, and we welcome you to type in your question. You can type it in English, in Spanish, in Russian. Our interpreters will translate it for us so that we can answer all questions. And we appreciate you putting questions in and making this a productive night for everyone who is here tonight. So our next question is for those children who have had traumatic experiences while in school due to a lack of officer, or an officer-related issue. Is there a way for them to tell their story? That was the one that we just had. I did not click done, but Christine said, please email them to her. Next, how will you be centering the voices of the ones most impacted by over-policing and the school to prison pipeline?
This is so critical. I cannot tell you how important this is, that we hear those voices, that we create that safer container. And so we are working with the principals to be able to have the meetings within the schools with the students at particular times. We're working with each principal individually. It will show up differently at each institution, and we've already launched those listening sessions. So they will be prominent, absolutely prominent in the findings that we have. And
Thank you.
what gets reported.
Thank you. All right, here's a question about the SRO program. Who evaluates the SROs and how often are these contracts, partnerships renewed?
I'll answer that question, Athena. The SROs are evaluated yearly by both the SRO supervisor and someone from the district, and we work together to collaboratively not just evaluate the school resource officers, but the actual program, and the intergovernmental agreement, which is called, gets renewed every 3 years. And so during that time, there could be changes by mutual agreement, but usually those contracts are in place for a specified amount of time until the next time it becomes available for renewal. And then we go through a process where we work with the city of Gresham and the school and the Gresham Police Department. And then we work on the intergovernmental agreement. And then we get approval from the city of Gresham, and we get approval from the school board.
Okay, here's the comment. This individual says, I feel that there was very little transparency with the GHS SRO being reassigned. What types of processes are in place to keep that from happening again? This person says, my kids are at GHS and we didn't know that he was being reassigned until after the board meeting. So Superintendent Hugh, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I can share that the reassignment piece, I think I shared, it was conversation with both the principal at Gresham High School, myself, and the chief. And moving forward, communication to our community should have come out a bit quicker. So I will take responsibility for that communication. But what was the other part of the question, Athena? It got off my...
Let me click on the box
Somebody...
and scroll down. Okay, it says, what types of processes are in place to keep that from happening again?
We will actually be including that in an intergovernmental agreement to put communication and processes moving forward. So that will be included within the intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, here's another question for James. Will more counselors be hired if the SRO stays at the district versus at the high schools?
I'm not really understanding the question. We've already hired 14 new counselors over the last 2 years in addition to the ones that we already have. So additional counselors, I'm not quite sure what that actually means as far as additional counselors at our schools.
Next, will the consulting group provide information on selecting an appropriate officer beyond regular police officer standard training? And further, will they provide the deter, detect, deny, delay, and defend benefits to an SRO in the school?
We do not at Buffalo Cloud provide that type of training. And we will have to see what happens during the listening sessions in terms of those types of recommendations. So we do not have a preconceived notion about the recommendations, because we want to base them on who we speak to, who is listening, uplifting the voices that have been historically minoritized. John?
Let me add to that too. Having done this work with other school districts, and we did hear from the lived experience and the voices of the students and the community and the staff. We did make recommendations on the selection process and also the training, professional development, and also the supervision of SROs, so that it's possible that we will make some recommendations around training, for SROs in the Gresham-Barlow School District. But we're just beginning this process, and so we don't have, as Dr. Moses said, we don't know what we're going to recommend because it's not up to us. It really is up to what we hear, from within the district and the school district community.
Okay, our next question, being that nationwide the SRO program criminalized and disproportionately targets Black, Indigenous, and otherwise marginalized students, and that many students have spoken out about how they have been targeted and harmed by our local SRO, how will the consultants center the voices of the most harmed students?
John, would you like to take that?
Well, I believe that Christine spoke to that briefly. One of the ways that we center the voices of students who have been negatively impacted by SROs is to really center the voices of students, and especially those who have experience and who have been impacted. And so we will center those voices. And in that process, we will be listening to all student voices. And so that is our commitment. We're not going to report that we heard yes or we heard no. We're going to really highlight, the lived experience of students especially, and that will center the voices of those who have been, marginalized or harmed in the process.
Thank you, John.
All right, next question. How does a student get to be interviewed regarding the SRO program? This individual says it seems only certain students get to voice their thoughts.
It's a process. We're
Yeah,
in the process.
And I can answer that too a little bit, that, the high school principals are going to be sharing information so that students can let them know they want to be interviewed or participate in the focus groups. But I will also say that the information that Dr. Moses just shared as far as contacting her at Buffalo Cloud Consulting is another opportunity if someone who wants to reach out directly to our consultants so that they can schedule a time where they're going to be interviewing different student groups.
Okay, next, I think we have a follow-up from the mother with the student at Gresham High School. So this would be for James. She talked to the security that is there and he said he would see what he could do, but nothing has happened. So what would you advise this parent to do next?
In relation to what, Ms. Athena?
This is the student who felt unsafe at Gresham High School and would like a school resource officer there.
I would say share that information directly with Principal Drake Shelton. Again, there's other opportunities to speak to the consultants, and certainly reach out via the email address that was shared on the screen. But I would say that sharing the information with the campus monitor at Gresham High School is one opportunity, but I would go so far as to say share it directly with school administration, whether it's an assistant principal or the principal, but to make sure that Mr. Shelton has the information, you know, email him or schedule a time to see him at the school.
Great, thank you. Here's a comment about the in-person listening session on May 17th. This person says technology today seems to be conducive for hybrid meetings, and the only way that this person can be present, since they live in Florida. They say their daughter attends elementary school there, I would assume here in Gresham, and I want to be involved with her school safety as much as possible. At least a recording of the in-person meeting would be helpful to be in the know.
We'll take it under advisement. It's a great idea, and we want to have a good experience for everyone. And so I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes. I'm saying I want to try and create the best experience possible, and we will do our best.
Okay. Here's a question. If there is a current need for an officer at Gresham High School, how fast do they get there? And is it considered equitable for Barlow to still have an officer, but Gresham not to?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have the Gresham Police Department that is, you know, on Eastman Parkway. It is a few minutes from Gresham High School. It is not directly on the campus, but right now we have the officer that is being housed at West Gresham Elementary School. So it's a few minutes away from Gresham High School. And again, we have two officers to support not just Gresham and Barlow high schools. The officers also support Springwater Trail, and they support our middle schools. And then in specific situations, they may have to go and support an elementary school as well in the district.
All right, here's a comment from an individual. While the ACLU data would be interesting, we need to make decisions based on our own students' data. And then another question is, will the public have access to the data collection?
That's going to be determined by our conversation with James and how he wants to report out this process. So that is still to be determined.
Here's a question about the role of a school resource officer. Do they have a duty or obligation to protect children or students in the school?
Absolutely.
One of the questions that we are asking is what should that role be? What do you want, you know, from a school resource officer? What do you need to experience safety in your school? And so we will be making recommendations that will have some impact on the role and responsibility of SROs.
Okay, next question. Who defines the SRO role responsibility?
That is defined in the intergovernmental agreement, and that's based on the information from the consultants that I will be taking under advisement as we are looking at intergovernmental agreement moving forward. but that's usually spelled out within that intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, next question. Learning should not be about the criminalization of perceived bad behavior, punitive systems, when students are in actuality communicating areas of need. Can the consulting team please consider recommending trauma-informed and restorative justice practices be brought to GBSD to reduce cycles which have been demonstrated to increase violence?
So what was just posted there is part of our process. So that statement will be one of many different perspectives that we will be listening to and will be considered in our report and recommendations to the superintendent.
Okay, here's a question. If there was a problem with the old SRO at Gresham High School, why was he not replaced by a different SRO?
So there's an actual process in going through and identifying school resource officers. There are folks that actually go through some training, as well as, you know, have to put in for wanting to work in that specific position and environment. So it wasn't an opportunity for us to actually have somebody else step into that. Currently, our school resource officer intergovernmental agreement actually expires at the end of the year. And so therefore, you know, prior to us looking at putting a new intergovernmental agreement together, we wanted to take a look at this information and this data to help inform us on how we actually move forward.
Okay, this next person says, it sounds like the school board is for the SRO program. Once the decision is made to have an SRO at the high school, will students be allowed to protest and petition on school grounds to have the SRO removed like they did before?
James, that's yours.
Yeah, that is mine, but I'm not going to comment on that because, you know, it's projecting out something that, again, I want to respect the process. This is about improving the program, and this is what I'm going to focus on how do we improve the SRO program.
Okay. This question is it possible that SROs are no longer stationed within GBSD's high schools, but still made available for specific incidents?
And again, that is, you know, until I get the information from our consultants, I do not want to speak on how we are moving forward. Again, the information should help inform me so I can make a recommendation to the board on an intergovernmental agreement. And so that is going to be working through a process. And so I don't want to reflect specific ways in which we're doing anything until I have a chance to actually review the data from our consultants.
Here's a question for the consultants. How many schools removed or added SROs based on your findings? How many schools have removed and how many added?
That's a good question and difficult to answer. So the other school districts have different contexts, different histories, and it's difficult to answer because one of those school districts is still in the process of making significant changes. So I think we're going to pass on answering that at this time. But thank you. It's a good question. The experience in different school districts is quite different from Gresham-Barlow. So that's the reason I'm reluctant to respond.
Okay, next, how will the students who support the SRO and the program be protected from being bullied? Their lived experiences matter too.
we at the consultants, we are listening to those lived experiences, and they're very meaningful, and we take them seriously, and that will be considered in our report. But I'm going to pass that back to Christine or to Superintendent Hugh.
I will add that we will not tolerate any bullying whatsoever on any side of this conversation. And so, we do have school district policies that have specific language in it that says that there is no bullying allowed. And if bullying is reported and we investigate it and we find that to be true, there will be consequences for those behaviors. So it's going to be specific to the incident that we may know about. As far as confidentiality, it's really around, the in-person pieces. We're really trying to be confidential around the students. When we start talking to staff and we start talking to community members, people will have opinions, and they certainly can share those opinions in person or online via Zoom. But if anybody worries about confidentiality, I will say that they should reach out directly to our consultants. And we've given the email address, and that way that information can be shared specifically to the consultants to protect their confidentiality within the situation.
Okay, next question. Where is the police department's involvement in training the SRO to be the officer the kids deserve? Do they have a specialized program for training those who enter schools as an SRO?
Again, there are trainings that happen. I will not speak for the city of Gresham and the Gresham Police Department. All of that will be within our intergovernmental agreement. So it's a little premature to answer that at this point in time.
Okay. This person says, because this can turn into such a volatile subject with wildly different opinions, what will be done to make sure that these meetings don't turn into a free-for-all and that small vocal groups don't overshadow the majority?
That's why it's really important to have affinity groups. Pro, con, different ways of being able to be in relationship with each other when we're in person, or if we go into breakout groups on Zoom. That's why they're so important for being able to have conversations where all of us can listen to each other. So again, people can have their opinions, but it is about deeply listening. And so John and the other consultants and I will be working to make sure that people are grouped in similar groups, and that as facilitators, that's our responsibility.
And let me add on is that we facilitate these meetings and these circles where it's not so much a debate. We set it up so that people get to share their experience and their perspective, and others listen. And we set it up so people take turns, and we have some agreements around listening and respect. And so we actually run a pretty tight listening session in that way, because we're aware that this is a heated issue, and people have very, very strong emotions and beliefs and lived experience, and it can be volatile. And so that's where we bring our experience in listening and facilitation to these sessions.
I just want to expand on that for a moment too. Both John and I come at this from a trauma-informed perspective. He comes at this from a mindfulness perspective. We're both very grounded people. We walk into the room, we ground people, we ask people to be centered in themselves, to be able to listen. And so we practice what we preach and invite people into that process. Yeah.
Okay, next, having SROs on campus infuses learning experiences with trauma for select students, which then creates barriers for full access and participation in education, deterring these students from pursuing higher education. And this person wonders if the superintendent is unwilling to consider ending the SRO contract. It doesn't feel like he cares about those students who feel like their learning cannot happen when in the presence of police officers. So this person asks, would the district consider a non-police officer SRO?
Too premature to make that decision, but I will say to the anonymous person who wrote that, I care about all of our students. I care about our community and our staff. And so this is a complex issue, and certainly I am doing what I believe is right by having our consultants actually listen to our students and our parents and our staff. Again, I am fully supportive of our SRO program, and I want to improve the program. And so hopefully this process will inform me to be able to make some recommendations on the intergovernmental agreement for us moving forward. But I do thank folks for their comments, and I will stand my ground and say I am fully committed to actually getting through this process. In November, I actually stated to the community what I was going to do, and I have stayed true to that. And so this process, I thought maybe wouldn't take as long. But if we are doing a process that truly is inclusive of the many voices and perspectives within our community, it is actually taking a little bit longer. And I've had that conversation with the consultants. I've had that conversation with our district leadership team. But it is something that I have said that I would do, and we are going to go through this process. So I appreciate the comments, and whether you agree with my perspective or not, I just want to be very clear on where I stand on this issue.
Okay, we're about 3 minutes away from 7 o'clock, so we will be winding things down very soon. We're going to answer a few more questions. Do students ever participate in the hiring of the SRO or other staff at GBSD?
And the answer to that is no, that it is the school district and the city of Gresham and the Gresham Police Department that actually participate in the hiring. But again, based on the consultants and recommendations, we are looking to improve our program, which may include processes for hiring, processes for evaluation, but it's too premature to speak to at this point.
Okay.
Athena, I'm going to
Yes.
take the next 3 questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
Will this consulting process be permanent, ongoing process? Not with Buffalo Cloud, not with us. We anticipate finishing our research in the middle of June at the very latest, and then writing the report, writing the recommendations, and delivering that to James. We want to make sure that we have enough time to be able to meet with students, meet with staff, meet with families, meet with the communities. And so I just wanted to give you that timeline for the bulk of our work, and it is just for this short amount of time between now and the summertime. John, if you don't mind, the completed assessment, and will that assessment provide separate products for each school? The person says, I would assume each school will have a different needs.
Based on what we're hearing, we will talk about what we're hearing from all 4 of the high schools, and specifically from Gresham High School and Barlow High School, with the history of SROs. So there may be different experiences, there may be slightly different needs, and we will report that to the superintendent. And we'll see, what there may be a specific recommendation for one school, different than another school, but we can't anticipate that. But we do know that there will be different voices and different perspectives from the different schools. And just as we are going to disaggregate the data, we are going to identify which students from which schools, have these perspectives, and what are the themes, what are the needs, what are the recommendations coming from the students and the families and the community and staff associated with each school.
Wonderful. We are at the top of the hour. Christine, if you want to share with folks how they can participate in our community listening session.
Again, the next community listening session is May 17th. Please go to the district website, gresham.k12.or.us. And again, students who who want anonymity, please feel free to email me at buffalocloudconsulting@yahoo.com. We look forward to seeing everyone on May 17th at 6 p.m.
Thank you for coming, everyone. We really appreciated you being here, being able to answer all of your questions tonight. And you can always email Christine Moses, our consultant, if you have additional questions or need to connect with our consultants. I hope you have a great week. Thanks again, and we appreciate your support of our students and our schools. Good night.